to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and this is episode number 300. It is a very, very special episode. I am joined by two incredible musicians, Chano, Dominquez, and Ethan Margolis. They've got a new album coming out in a few days called The Blues Around Us. What you're listening to now is Rum Bop Swing from The Blues Around Us. And I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Chano and Ethan.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Chano.
Hello, Ethan. How are you?
Pretty good.
Welcome, both of you, Chano and Ethan, to Harmonious World.
Mm-hmm. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a great pleasure to talk to you because The Blues Around Us is a lovely album. And I want to talk about how it came about in the first place and then when the pieces were written and recorded and all the rest of it. So let's start with how you two met.
Well, I moved in 2014 to Seattle for living in Seattle. And I received, it was like that, right, Ethan? An email. You emailed me, or
I think so. Something like that. Yeah.
And he emailed me in English, and I respond in English, everything in English, and then because
in English, I did.
Yeah. No, I remember very well, Ethan. And
wow.
then when we met first time face to face. You start to talking Spanish to me, and I say, "Tio, why you write in English?" I didn't know because this guy is like a really hybrid person, cultural person, because he grew up in Lebrija and he learned all the basement of the real flamenco thing. So he's really clear on that. But then he grew up in Los Angeles with a father who is a singer, guitar player, surrender of blues. And, when I met Ethan, Ethan started talking about the bluegrass and the really old blues. I thought, wow, what a opportunity to learn very well all these roots of the music of the American music, no? And then to try to play with the rhythm that we love it. And so he is starting to show me different blues and blueses, and we were agree, and wow, this is amazing in seguirilla style or in soleá style or in bulería. So we starting to working on that. When I was living in Brooklyn, he came to Brooklyn and we were working like a week, preparing all the basement of the song that Ethan write before, after our meeting and our concept of the recording.
Okay, so Ethan, what made you send that first email? Now, obviously, Chano is a well-respected musician who's got a history of incredible music. So was it just that, or was there something specific?
No, it was very, very specific. It was very, very, very specific. Let's see. That's a big question. So I think from my perspective, growing up in a musical family here and attached and linked to blues and jazz, and then leaving the US and living for so long in Spain, specifically in in flamenco's equivalent of the Delta area for what would be the blues like Helena, Arkansas, and Clarksville, Mississippi, and that area. The equivalent for flamenco is a 4 or 5 town region, and I lived in one of those towns, one of the oldest towns in all of Spain, and and the town that has the largest percentage of Romani inhabitants per capita. So the town has maybe 25,000, 26,000 people in it. And of those, I think there's close to 4,000 Romani in that town, and they have been there since centuries ago. So when I was in Spain, I wasn't focused on jazz. I wasn't focused on blues. I wasn't focused on anything except for understanding the roots of Romani flamenco culture and flamenco culture in general, right? That was it. So all the years that I was in Spain, I lived there about 13 years, and I've been connected for about 26 years. All those years, I wasn't looking for any kind of a hybrid or fusion, or I wasn't trying to mix genres. So for those reasons, I think Chano and I didn't meet in Spain, because I just wasn't in that world. I was in a small little town hiding away, learning from a lot of people who were not, a lot of people who weren't even commercial or professional artists. So as soon as I got back to the US, I went back into blues and jazz mode, and right away started, jazz projects, and started performing with some fabulous musicians, Mitchell Foreman from Mahavishnu Orchestra and Wayne Shorter. He was in my group for years. Darren Johnson, who played with Miles Davis and Stanley Clarke. I mean, there's been some great piano players. So when I reached out to Chano, it was very specific as to somebody who has that level of caliber, that level of motivation towards the musical dedication criterias, and then somebody, and probably the only person, who might have been able to understand the vision that I had at that time. There's not many of us. There's a lot of people who dabble. I say this kind of a lot, but there's a lot of people who dabble. There's not that many people who their whole lives are based on international musical cultural connection. It's one thing to spend a year, 6 months, 2 years. It's another thing to spend, like Chano, 50 years dedicated to jazz and flamenco, right?
Yeah.
My case has now been, it's been 28 years dedicated to that. So that's a long time. And I think at a certain point you realize that, okay, there's actually not that many people that have put in the time and that are prepared to deliver this at a high bar and be able to do it without having to coach them for a year. And so Chano is the leading, has long since been the leading exponent of this thing with the jazz and the flamenco mixing. And Paco de Lucia did something else. He didn't do jazz and flamenco. He did some things, but he didn't do jazz, blues, and flamenco the way Chano has done his whole life. And I'm very faithful to deep Southern country blues. I believe in those blues as being a foundation of everything we hear in our music today. And I believe they're one of the purest reflections of Africa and African culture in American music. Because of that, I think that those voices and those rhythm patterns are very unique. And I think a lot of them have since been overlooked and have been a bit lost over the years. You turn on a voice like Skip James or Robert Johnson or Leadbelly, and I mean you're hearing something that is really very, very, very deep and very advanced in musical interpretation. That's what I believe. So because of that, I'm very picky about who I would call, and there wasn't, Chano was the call. I mean, there wasn't 3 people in line for that. It was one person. And I think that when I wrote Chano, I might have written him in English because maybe I thought that would get his attention.
You got it, man. You got it.
If I would have spoken to him the way we speak together, he might have ignored the email.
No, but when I realized that you speak like an Andalusian guy, I felt really close to you, and that was the really beginning of the project. And I was involved in that concert with this singer from
So that, I mean, that
Hungary.
concert,
Wow,
Chano saw a lot.
It was amazing concert, man. It was amazing concert.
Chano saw that. So, you know, Chano in his discography has done so much exploration with blues and jazz and everything. The concert that I called him for was an album that I had already put out a few months earlier, and that album was called Sonicete Blues. That's what the record was called. And it was all about blues and jazz vocals over flamenco rhythms. So, I mean, Chano was the guy who, you know, when I found out that Chano was in the US, immediately I said, oh, you know, I'd love to meet him. And I think in the first email, I think I sent a few of the recordings so he could hear. And I knew that when he listened to those recordings, he'd be able to recognize the connection that I had with flamenco by hearing the recording.
No, of course, and I did. I remember that Tomasito was collaborating with you.
Yeah,
that Tomasito used to dance with me, and so I realized that we had a real connection before even we know each other.
Right. Because there's not many, you know, there's not that many of us. Like
no, I don't think so. People who really know the music in the basement of the music well. I don't think so. You know, there is a few, but not much.
Right.
Not much.
Because it takes a lifetime to
yeah.
It's still happening. I mean, you know, this album that we just did is a representation of further ideas that we didn't even have 10 years ago, you know, and yeah, I mean, it's not, I think sometimes maybe all over the world, but, you know, certainly a lot in the US, in the session scene, in the, you know, I live near Ventura, California now, but the Los Angeles scene is known for being able to deliver a lot of different music genres. But most of it is very surface, you know, it's not dedication over multi-decades and traveling and being with the people. And you learn a whole different level of humility. And I think of respect towards people's families when you really live there and you really live in it. And you look at the music very differently because of that, right? It's not just a session for $500 where I have to sound like, oh, I sound like a Spanish, or I sound like a blues man, or I sound like, you know, it has to be real, you know?
Yeah.
I agree.
It has to be very real, you know? My love for the blues started when I was very young, and I found out that half of my family was, because I grew up in Cleveland, they found out that half of my family was from Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama. Right? I mean, as a little kid, you know, we started going down to the farm down there of my great grandmother and meet the whole family. And, you know, I was very small, 3 years old, whatever, 4 years old, and assimilating the difference between the deep South and Cleveland, or the, you know, northern cities. You know, I was saying, well, what is this? You know, and what, you know, it was such an immense difference in every way. Even just the climate and the land, you know. And so I think that sparked my original curiosity about the blues, and to find out what was this magical art form that had been brewing for so long in that area. You know? So I have an affinity for it, even though I'm not a Black artist, and I'm not, you know, but I have a very deep affinity for the roots of the blues, and I've been studying them my whole life. And flamenco hasn't connected a lot with that, right? Right. It hasn't, but there's a parallel in there, and Chano knows it. Other people know it. There's a famous flamenco producer who's a friend of mine named Ricardo Pachon. He's always known it. He's always known the connection between the two. It's pretty powerful. It's just, you know, they don't line up in every way. They line up in certain ways.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it, that there hasn't been a lot of bringing together of the blues and flamenco, and yet in some ways it seems logical, because they're both kind of what might be called the folk tradition, in terms of sort of real people learning to play stuff from by ear from people around them rather than a study, you know,
Right.
at a university or whatever.
Yeah. And just simply, you know, elements like very, very small, short verse structures.
Yeah.
Very 3-line kind of poetry verses, real short, not big songs, you know. Singular tonal centers in both of them, like one tonal center with a few passing chords and then back to the tonal center. Very, very small amount of chording, which, by the way, later gives way to the whole modal approach and everything of, you know, of Miles Davis and of everybody. I mean, if there's a singular tonal approach in two genres, that gives you a lot of room to work the melody, you know. And so there's that, and then there's simply the fact that, you know, one man singing with a guitar, you know, that's very similar.
Yeah.
But it's a hard connect, you know. Flamenco is a very hard music to understand. If you're not there, it's very, very, very hard. You know, I have plenty of friends and students that have been their whole life involved in flamenco outside of the region, and you never quite get there, you know. So yeah. It's very hard to understand. The deep blues is very hard to understand. I think that we take that for granted. You know, I've heard people all over the world, oh, I got the blues. The blues is nothing. And I hear one note and I go, I'm not sure you got the blues.
Yeah. We are talking about the popular music that is creating in the street, for the people. So it's something that, of course, you can put in the school and try to communicate the shape, the chord, the harmonies. But then, if you are not living this part of the music, who is to be with the people who are doing the music for joy. This is for me the point.
Right.
Then you learn very well because you are around surrender of the people. In Jerez, if you want to play bulería, you have to go to the Santiago church around and then putting all the people and see how the people is feeling the clapping and the food and everything, and then you become to be like a part of this rhythm because it's something real that you are living, and that you have to learn like this. There is no other way for me.
And it's not financially motivated, you know, which is so powerful because people are doing it in, you know, and not everybody does it there, right? But people are doing it because it's who they are and because they want to do it. It's not because, oh, if I get together this afternoon and sing a little bit with my friend, you know, someone's going to call us and we're going to make $1,000. That's not the motivation. You know, the motivation is not economic. It's not financial in those areas. It's part of the town. It's part of the people. It's part of the families. It's what they do. They do it. My most important Roma teachers, they taught me what flamenco was when they told me, Ethan, stop worrying so much about what everyone's telling you about the drunken evenings, and you pay attention to the singers who can wake up at 9 a.m. and sing por soleá with nothing, no drink, no nothing, and they're happy doing that at 9 a.m. They said that's the true test of all this.
Yeah.
They said if someone can wake up in the morning and they don't need all the people around and they don't need the booze and they don't need anything and they just having a coffee and going through the music, that means they really, really, really love it and are really, really devoted to it. And I remember hearing that several years in, and I was having a lot of late evenings. And I remember thinking about it, going, maybe I should start waking up earlier. Maybe I should start waking up earlier instead of staying up so late.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. I think the coming together of you two is really, really special. It's a really amazing thing. But the album didn't come very quickly, did it? this album?
It's like it came in like right. I think it was a 10-year. It was like a 9-year process.
Right.
That had little
bursts of activity.
Yeah, it had some bursts, and one of the bursts was the original conversation about doing it. I think after the original, when we first met, and after that, I think Chano said, we've got to do something together, and he really wanted. Oh, sorry, somebody's cutting the grass out here. My windows are shut, but it's loud.
That's all right.
Chano really wanted to do a blues record. He really wanted to do that, and I wasn't as convinced because I just done a blues record with flamenco, right? Also, I knew that in the U.S., if we do a blues record, it's probably not going to make any money, right? And we may or may not get concert opportunities as a result. Whereas if we did a record around more of a Spanish music hybrid with jazz, I thought we'd have a better opportunity at getting more touring potential, right? But Chano really wanted to do the blues. So I think after a while, I let that sit. And since I love the blues, I just had to get to the place where I decided within myself that, okay, I'm on board with that, and then, so that was like burst one or two. And then the second one was like 2018, I think, or so, when I went to Brooklyn, like he said. So that was like 4 years after the original. I brought probably like 30 styles of blues to Chano's apartment, and we played through all of them over and over again and decided, what were the most interesting styles to mix on the record. And then, then the pandemic hit, right? And so I don't know, several years later or whatever, we took it up again, probably 2023. And at that point, I think I said to Chano, I said, I'd rather do an instrumental record, because we talked about Chano wanted to do a kind of like a vocal record where I'd play some guitar, but I'd sing a lot of the blues over flamenco rhythms, and I liked that concept, but I didn't think it was gonna showcase Chano the way that I thought could be really great for him, like on this record. I wanted to hear a blues record where Chano played jazz blues.
Right.
And I wanted to hear that in a way that proved a very big point in the US market, which is that at a certain point, we have to take musicians out of the box. We the press always wants to keep all of us in a box. Everyone, Chano can play all this music, right? There's a lot of genres of music that I can play. Chano's been doing this stuff his whole life, but everyone's always, it's got to be always flamenco box. And the danger of doing that is, over enough time, even though that's a foundational part of who he is, and at this point, who I am too, it gets old to always be the same exact label, And so I think this is a way to listen to Chano on this record that, might be one of the first recordings, high quality recordings, that you can really hear him really play through the blues,
Absolutely. Right. At this point, I would like to play a bit of The Blues Around Us, the title track, because I think that is wonderful, and I think it shows Chano's playing absolutely beautifully.
The ballad, right? The ballad?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite tracks. I wanted to put that as track one, but Chano wanted to go more energetic. Right, Chano?
I think it's a great track. Right, let's play a little bit of that.
Okay.
Chano, can you talk to me about how the composition and improvisation process happened for that track specifically?
Well, that track is a really, really like no regular harmony.
No.
Because Ethan wrote something that is like a broken all the time, like a possible harmonic center or something like that.
Yeah.
So and for me it was like a wow, I'm surprised because some combination was like a really new for me, and I had to learn a little bit. But then when we were recording, I just flow with the sound. You know, I was listening Carlos Enrique and all the guitar chord, and I just go with the flow and try to be like creating another possible melodies or more that making like a lot of notes or something. That was the thing to me. I enjoy so much recording that song because I love when you make like a new kind of harmonies that you never go through before. So it's nice to discover new path harmonically, like Ethan did in that song.
I'm not sure if Chano knows, but that he might not have realized it in the moment, but the core of that ballad composition is a taranta. That's the core of it. But obviously I didn't write it like a like a taranta. No, but I used the flamenco voicings on the guitar for a modern taranta, and I incorporated those into that ballad. What made it almost sound atonal or something was because I started to modulate in those voicings, and then I wrote a melody that followed the strange changes. So the melody is specifically, meant to be very haunting, and I think that over time, if we're given the opportunity to continue to play that piece, I think that piece is going to turn into something that we maybe aren't even aware of what it is, down the road in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because you can find many different ways to play that song. The harmony offered to you many new path, and you can explore a lot in that song.
Yeah, it's a bit of a labyrinth, kind of like a labyrinth,
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's also, I mean, it's an interesting composition and improvisation process, but it's also a beautiful piece of music.
Of course, I think I always try to make something that has some kind of beauty. Even though we are improvising, but we are like creating or recreating something, and always try to make that. And I realized that that is like what made me feel happy when I'm doing that. I'm like creating, but it's like going with the flow. If you are playing with great musicians, as is the case that this recording is easier, you can.
Yeah. While we're on that, then let's talk about the other people on the album, because they are extraordinary, aren't they? So how did you choose those people?
I don't think that we were going to find anybody maybe as devoted to the mission as the two of us were, but I did know that if they had been very devoted to the blues and over years, and also to different Caribbean and Spanish rhythms at the same time, like Caribbean Spanish, or whatever. The Afro-Caribbean music as a whole has given us so much rhythm, and whether it be the West Indian side or the Hispanic side or whatever, given us so many rhythmic tools in the U.S. And New Orleans is a port of the Caribbean, right? So, like like Wynton has always said, and probably his father, New Orleans is a Caribbean port, and jazz is heavily built on Afro-Caribbean rhythms. So if we want to find somebody to play with us on this record to bring out the spirit, I didn't want to go too heavily into Spain. Chano agreed with that because we didn't want it to be isolated in Spain, right? And so I think the idea was who are going to be some of the best players that can play the blues and swing, and are also very tied into Afro-Caribbean rhythms. And I mean, the answer and the first call were the people basically that are on the record. So both of them, both Carlos and Obed, have family roots in the Caribbean. I think Carlos is Puerto Rico, and Obed is Haiti. And they're in New York, and they play in Wynton's band, and that they're dedicated to exposition of the blues through Wynton's band at Jazz at Lincoln Center. They were both interested in flamenco. Flamenco also has African influence, and I think that it just made a lot of sense. Not to mention that Chano had played with Carlos, also.
Yeah, that's true. I met Carlos in 2003 when I worked for playing with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra and Wynton Marsalis. And we did the premiere of a suite that I wrote down called the Kaya New Orleans. So I had the opportunity to play with Carlos many times, and I knew that Carlos understood very well all the feelings about the Spanish rhythms, because he did it with me before. So
yeah, but like he also understands the blues so well,
Of course.
And I think that was the scary part for me, was that we would go too far away from the blues with other types of players. If we would have used people who are more dedicated to Spanish music specifically, we might have lost some of the blues essence that we wanted to maintain. And so Carlos is just a perfect hybrid also. Carlos between Spanish rhythms and Afro-Caribbean rhythms and blues jazz,
Yeah, right.
Amazing hybrid musician who dominates all of those fields, if you're playing bass for Wynton Marsalis, you need to dominate blues and swing and
absolutely
and Afro-Caribbean rhythms. And that's Carlos. Carlos is a very, very special musician in that way, and Obed as well,
Yeah. And they all four of you are kind of at the top of your game. It feels like you're there where this album is a possibility.
That was the hope.
Yeah.
That was the hope. It was risky. We did the whole album in one day.
No way.
Yeah, 10 hours.
No way.
But I have to tell you, when I started to play with Obed and Carlos, I realized that the thing is gonna flow. It's gonna, So it was really a joy for me.
Wow.
It was intense, of course.
Yeah.
Intense, because you have to make the record in one day. But we were enjoying all the session. So I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that.
When the right people with the right attitudes and the right backgrounds of studying, I think, are in the same room, and the mission is motivating to everybody, things flow,
Yeah.
Wow.
And they did. They flowed very well. At the end of the day, I remember the engineer, who is kind of jazz's most luminary engineer at this point, James Farber.
Yeah.
He walked up to me. He said, "This whole day was just such a great vibe, and the energy in the room was just spectacular." And I've recorded with James a lot, and James has never said that before.
No,
So
This
I
this honestly feels like a very, very special album. It really does. I listen to a lot of music. I've got piles of stuff that I need to listen to, stuff that I have listened to. This is special, and I can
Wow.
see that.
Wow, really appreciate that. Yeah,
thank you for
make
saying
me
that.
happy. Yeah,
Wow.
this is the purpose, to make happy the people who are listening music, and
Yeah.
and if you're happy, you make me happy too. To be,
Good.
you know
Well,
what?
there you
And this is like energy go back and forth, and we can change the world.
go.
Touring notes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the sonic delivery of the record was very important to us, and Chano really pushed alongside with me on that. And there is an element apart from just the performance that is dedicated to recreating a depth and a warmth in the sound and the way the album sounds, because I really believe that perhaps we're losing the focus on that. But in the 60s, 70s, there was a lot of focus placed on the sonic delivery of the record, and whether or not the sonic delivery by itself was spiritual. Whether when you turned it on, how did your body react to the sonic? Not just the music, but to the sounds. How did the cells in your body react? And at this point in my life, I'm not really willing to do projects that don't pursue that. And a lot of musicians don't want to come on that ride with me, because it's a intense ride, and it's a expensive ride for us to fund, or to put in the investment to have a record sound the way this one does. But I believe that records that achieve some of that sonic output, where your cells react in a happy way, those records are going to be around forever, I think. And so, Chano went with that, and he was excited by that, and that was very important. That's an important piece of this project, because it could have been recorded and it could have been executed in a lot of different ways. And certainly nowadays, everybody's doing it in a lot. They're cutting a lot more corners, because music doesn't make any money, and it makes sense to cut corners. I mean, you're not going to get the money back on a record that you make these days.
Yeah.
But also, this is going to be around, isn't it? This is going to stick around. This is an album that is going to be in those lists that we make for years to come. No, it genuinely is.
That's an amazing thing to say. I hope you're right.
Well, it is for me. It's not often that I get really moved by an album, and this one really has moved me.
Wow.
Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah.
There you go.
That was the point, right, Chano?
Yeah. Of course.
That was the objective. So if we've even made one person happy, I think that's three of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You make me happy today with your comment about the record, about the recording, how we did it, and I tell you, we did it with the heart. We did it with the truth. It's nothing that no. It's something that we really. I think we really need to do it. It's something that we felt because I think that these two cultures that you think are really away from each other, when you go deep into the music, like the old blues, the really the slow blues, and you compare that with Soleá, you realize that you can put together these two ways of feeling, and then they are talking about the same thing, because Soleá usually are talking about some lost sadness, like betrayed for love, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And in blues is something is talking about that as well. So then you realize how close we are all in the world, and I can see that in many different music, African music or Latin American music, or Eastern music, and make me think like, wow, man, music is a good things to discover the history of the humanity, because we are all connected, all connected. Yeah. Then we invented the boundaries, the flags, the borders. But when you go with the music into that, you realize that we are all, we need all the same thing. It doesn't matter if you are white, if you are brown, if you are red, or doesn't matter. We need the same thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Amen to that, Chano.
Absolutely. I can't think of a better way of ending this episode, to be honest. That was amazing. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you both.
Thanks to you, Hilary. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for episode 300 of Harmonious World. What you're listening to now is Bidding Farewell from The Blues Around Us by Chano Dominquez and Ethan Margolis. As you can tell, this is one of my all-time favourite albums, not just one of my favourites of 2025. It's a stunning album, and I can only encourage you to listen to it in full from beginning to end. Please share this episode, like, review, all of those things. It really does make a difference. You can subscribe via my website and via the Buzzsprout website and on Patreon. All the links are in the show notes. But thank you for joining me for episode number 300 of Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.